The massive station known as Unity Prime floated at the center of the galaxy like a jewel in the darkness of space. It was here that 47 species gathered each year to show their newest ships, their latest technology, and their commitment to peace. The Galactic Concord had kept order for 3,000 years. Wars still happened at the edges, but the great empires had learned to talk instead of fight. Admiral Sarah Chen stood at the viewport of her ship and watched the station grow larger. She was a small woman with gray streaks in her black hair and eyes that had seen too much death. Behind her, the bridge crew worked in silence. They all knew what was about to happen. They all knew the galaxy was about to change. "Admiral," said Commander Torres, her second in command, "we're receiving docking instructions. Bay 47. Sarah nodded. Bay 47 was at the far end of the station, away from the main viewing areas. The Concorde was already trying to hide them. She almost smiled. They would not be hidden for long. The ship she commanded was called the Prometheus. From the outside, it did not look special. It was smaller than the massive Velthari dreadnoughts, and much smaller than the Kreth hive carriers that held thousands of fighter craft. Its hull was a simple gray, without the golden decorations of the elder races or the organic curves of the insectoid species. But inside that simple hull was something that would terrify the galaxy. Sarah had been there when they designed it. She had watched the engineers work for 15 years, driven by a memory that none of them could forget. She had been a young lieutenant when the Harrow came to New Helsinki. She had been one of only 300 survivors from a colony of 2 million people. The Concorde had done nothing. Humanity was not a member then. They were not protected. The elder races had sent their condolences and their empty words, and Sarah had buried her parents and her brother and sworn that it would never happen again. Now that oath had taken physical form. The Prometheus was humanity's answer to a galaxy that would not protect them. The ship docked smoothly and Sarah straightened her uniform. "Torres, you have the bridge. I'm going to the assembly." "Good luck, Admiral." Sarah paused at the door. "Luck has nothing to do with it. Today we show them what we've built. Tomorrow they'll have to decide what to do about it." She walked through the corridors of Unity Prime, past delegates from dozens of species. Some she recognized from her years of diplomatic service. The tall, blue-skinned Velthari with their ancient pride, the Kreth with their clicking mandibles and compound eyes, the small, furry Fennery who always seemed nervous, the crystalline Dulak who communicated through pulses of light. They all looked at her as she passed. Word had already spread that humanity had brought something new to the Fleet Review. The Grand Assembly Hall was enormous, designed to hold representatives from every member species. Holographic displays floated above the central stage, showing the ships that had already been presented. Sarah took her seat in the human section, a small area near the back of the hall. Humanity had only been members for 12 years. They were still considered newcomers, still not taken seriously by the elder races. That was about to change. The Velthari High Minister, an elderly male named Kethros, stood at the central podium. His voice boomed through the translation systems that made all species understand each other. "We now come to our newest members. The United Earth Government will present their contribution to the Fleet Review. Ambassador Chen, please proceed." Sarah stood and walked to the podium. She could feel thousands of eyes on her, some curious, some dismissive. The humans had never presented anything impressive before. Their ships were considered functional but crude, good enough for defense, but nothing special. "Thank you, High Minister," Sarah said. Her voice was calm and steady. "On behalf of the United Earth Government, I present the UES Prometheus, first of its class." She touched a control, and a hologram of her ship appeared above the stage. There were a few polite sounds of interest, nothing more. It looked like an ordinary battleship. Then Sarah began to list its capabilities. The Prometheus is equipped with a cascade drive, allowing near-instantaneous repositioning within a star system. It can move from one side of a solar system to the other in less than 3 seconds. The polite interest turned to confusion. Several delegates leaned forward in their seats. Its shields use adaptive learning technology. They analyze incoming weapons fire and adjust their frequency to counter it. After the first hit, subsequent attacks from the same weapon type are reduced by 90%. Now the confusion was turning to alarm. The Kreth delegate was clicking rapidly, consulting with his aides. The Velthari High Minister had gone very still. Its weapons array can be calibrated across a full spectrum, from precise disabling shots that leave a ship intact to full-yield strikes capable of cracking a planet's crust. The Prometheus can engage and defeat a fleet of 100 standard warships with minimal damage to itself. The hall erupted into chaos. Delegates were shouting, demanding explanations, calling for order. The Velthari High Minister was banging his staff against the podium, trying to restore calm. Sarah stood quietly and waited. Finally, Kithros managed to silence the crowd. His blue face had turned a darker shade, a sign of extreme distress in his species. "Admiral Chen," he said slowly, "these claims are extraordinary. Do you have proof of these capabilities?" "Yes, High Minister. All test data has been submitted to the Concord Technical Committee. They have verified our claims." A Kreth delegate stood up, his mandibles clicking with agitation. "This is impossible. Humans have been spacefaring for less than 3 centuries. You cannot have developed technology that surpasses what we have built in 10,000 years." Sarah looked at him calmly. "We did not surpass your technology, delegate. We simply approached the problems differently. Your species and the Velthari have been at the top of the Concord for millennia. You had no reason to innovate. We had every reason." "What reason?" the Kreth demanded. "Survival." The word hung in the air. Sarah saw some of the smaller species nodding slowly. They understood. They too had felt the fear of being powerless in a dangerous galaxy. The Velthari High Minister spoke again, his voice strained. "Admiral Chen, the Concord is built on the principle of balanced deterrence. No single species should have overwhelming military advantage. This Prometheus threatens that balance." "The Concord is also built on the principle of mutual protection," Sarah replied. "Article 7 states that any member species under attack will receive aid from the full might of the Concord. But that protection does not extend to non-members. We learned that lesson 18 years ago." She paused, letting the memory of New Helsinki fill the silence. "When the Harrow came to our colony, we begged for help. We sent messages to every species within range. We were told that we were not members, not protected, not their concern. 2 million of our people died while the Concord watched and did nothing." Several delegates looked away in shame. Others bristled at the accusation. "So we built the Prometheus," Sarah continued, "not to threaten anyone, not to conquer or dominate. We built it because we learned that in this galaxy, the only protection we can count on is our own." The hall was silent. Then the Velthari High Minister spoke, his voice cold. "This matter requires further discussion. I am calling an emergency session of the Security Council. Until a decision is reached, I must ask that the Prometheus remain docked and that no other vessels of this class be constructed." Sarah shook her head. "With respect, High Minister, that is not your decision to make. The Prometheus is a defensive vessel of the United Earth government. We have broken no laws by building it." "Then perhaps the laws need to change," Kethros said. "I am formally proposing a motion to ban the Prometheus-class design. If it passes, humanity will be required to decommission the vessel and share all related technology with the Concord." The threat was clear. Submit or face consequences. Sarah looked around the hall at the gathered delegates. She saw fear in many faces, anger in others. But she also saw something else. In the sections where the smaller species sat, she saw hope. The Fenari, the Dulak, the dozen other races who lived in constant fear of their larger neighbors. They were looking at her with something like wonder. "The United Earth government will participate in the debate," Sarah said carefully. "But I will say this clearly. We will not give up the Prometheus. We will not return to being helpless. The galaxy may not like what we have built, but we built it because the galaxy gave us no choice." She turned and walked back to her seat. Behind her, the hall exploded into argument once more. That night, alone in her quarters on the Prometheus, Sarah received a message from Earth Command. The President and the Security Council had reviewed the situation. They were standing behind her completely. She was reading their statement of support when her communications officer interrupted. "Admiral, we're receiving long-range sensor data from the frontier. Multiple ships detected entering Concord space at high speed." Sarah felt her blood run cold. Configuration? Unknown, but the signature matches historical records. The officer paused. Admiral, it's the Harrow. They're heading toward Fenari territory. Sarah closed her eyes. 18 years since New Helsinki. The Harrow had returned, and now humanity finally had the power to do something about it. She stood and walked to the bridge. The debate about the Prometheus was suddenly unimportant. What mattered now was whether she would use it the way it was meant to be used. Set course for the Sorrel Drift, she ordered. Maximum speed. We're going to war. The emergency session of the Security Council was scheduled to begin in 6 hours. Sarah had no intention of being there. She stood on the bridge of the Prometheus as it powered up its engines. Around her, the crew moved with quiet efficiency. They all knew what they were doing. They all knew it might mean the end of humanity's place in the Concord. None of them cared. Admiral, said Commander Torres, Unity Prime is hailing us. They're demanding we return to dock. Tell them we've received a distress signal and are responding according to Article 7. Torres raised an eyebrow. We're not exactly covered by Article 7, Admiral. The Fenari haven't asked for our help specifically. They're asking for anyone who can help. We can help. That's good enough for me. The Prometheus slid away from Unity Prime, its engines glowing blue against the darkness of space. Behind them, Sarah knew that dozens of delegates were watching, some with anger, others with confusion. Let them watch. Let them see what a human ship could do. The Cascade Drive engaged, and the stars stretched into lines of light. They would reach Fenari space in 3 hours. The combined Concord fleet would take 3 weeks. Sarah left Torres in command and went to her ready room. She needed to think about what came next. The Harrow were not like other enemies. They did not conquer or negotiate. They simply destroyed. In 3,000 years of galactic history, no one had ever captured a Harrow ship or spoken with a Harrow face to face. They came, they killed, they disappeared. She pulled up everything the Concorde knew about them. It was not much. They appeared from the deep void between galaxies, raided civilization after civilization, and vanished again. Their ships were fast and brutal, designed for quick strikes and maximum destruction. They did not take prisoners. They did not respond to communication attempts. The destruction of New Helsinki had been typical. The Harrow fleet had arrived without warning, overwhelmed the colony's defenses in minutes, and systematically killed every living thing on the surface. By the time rescue ships arrived, there was nothing left but ash and silence. Sarah had been off-world when it happened, assigned to a training vessel in the outer system. She had watched the attack on long-range sensors, helpless to do anything. She had heard the final transmissions from her family. Those transmissions still played in her dreams. A chime at her door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in." It was Dr. James Okonkwo, the ship's chief engineer. He was a large man with kind eyes and hands that had built half the technology on the Prometheus. "Admiral, I thought you should know. The crew is with you. All of them. Whatever happens after this, we're not turning back." Sarah nodded slowly. "I never doubted it. But James, you should understand what we're about to do. The Concorde might expel us for this. We might spend the rest of our careers as outcasts." James smiled. "With respect, Admiral, I didn't spend 15 years building this ship so it could sit in a dock. And neither did anyone else on this crew. We built it to protect people. That's what we're going to do." After he left, Sarah allowed herself a moment of pride. Whatever else happened, she had the best crew in the galaxy. 3 hours later, the Prometheus dropped out of Cascade Drive at the edge of the Sorrel Drift. What Sarah saw on the sensors made her stomach turn. 300 Harrow ships were arranged in attack formation, moving toward the Fenari colonies. Against them, 20 Fenari defense ships were forming a desperate line. It was not a battle. It was a slaughter waiting to happen. "Open a channel to the Fenari commander," Sarah ordered. A moment later, a small furry face appeared on screen. The Fenari were a gentle species, more scientists than warriors. This one looked terrified but determined. "Human vessel, this is Commander Yurik of the Fenari Defense Force. Why are you here? Your people have no obligation to help us." "We're here because you need help," Sarah said simply. "Fall back to your colonies and prepare to evacuate civilians. We'll handle the Harrow." Commander Yurik stared at her. 1 ship against 300? Admiral, I appreciate your courage, but this is suicide. It's not suicide, Commander. It's a demonstration. Now please get your people to safety. Things are about to get very loud. The Fennery ships began to pull back, still broadcasting their disbelief. Sarah turned to her crew. Battle stations, all weapons to ready status, shields to adaptive mode. The bridge transformed around her. Lights dimmed to combat red. Display screens filled with tactical data. The Prometheus had never been tested in real combat, only in simulations. They were about to find out if 15 years of work had been worth it. Admiral, said the weapons officer, the Harrow fleet is changing formation. They've detected us. Good. Open a channel to them. All frequencies. There was a moment of silence. Then Sarah spoke. Harrow vessels, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earthship Prometheus. You are entering Concord space with hostile intent. Turn back now and you will not be harmed. Continue your attack and you will be stopped. She waited. No response came. The Harrow never responded. Admiral, they're accelerating. Weapons are charging. Sarah took a deep breath. 18 years of pain and anger and grief had led to this moment. She could destroy them all. The Prometheus had the power to turn every Harrow ship into dust, but that was not why they had built this ship. All weapons to disable mode. Target engines and weapon systems only. No lethal force unless absolutely necessary. Torres looked at her in surprise. Admiral, we're not here to commit genocide, Commander. We're here to prove a point. And the point is not that we can kill. The point is that we choose not to. The first Harrow ships opened fire. Brilliant beams of energy lanced through space toward the Prometheus. Sarah watched calmly as they struck the shields. Shield status? Adaptive systems analyzing. Done. Incoming damage reduced by 93%. Admiral, their weapons can barely scratch us. Then let's begin. Helm, engage Cascade Drive. Attack Pattern Omega. The Prometheus disappeared. To the Harrow fleet, what happened next must have seemed like magic. The human ship was in front of them, then it was behind them, then it was above them. It appeared and fired and vanished before they could react. Each shot was precise, surgical. Engines exploded. Weapons arrays went dark. Ships that had been deadly warships moments before became helpless drifts of metal. Sarah watched the battle unfold on her tactical display. The Harrow tried to adapt, tried to concentrate their fire, tried to escape. Nothing worked. The Cascade Drive made the Prometheus untouchable. The adaptive shields made their weapons useless. One by one, their ships fell silent. After 4 hours, it was over. 212 Harrow ships floated dead in space, their crews alive but unable to fight. Another 60 had been damaged but were still mobile. The remaining 28 had fled into deep space. The Prometheus had not taken a single casualty. Admiral, said the communications officer, the fleeing ships are transmitting. It looks like a distress call. No, it's a warning. They're telling other Harrow to stay away from this region. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. That was exactly what she had wanted. Open a channel to the disabled ships. When the channel opened, she spoke slowly and clearly. Harrow vessels, your attack has failed. Your fleet is destroyed. We could have killed all of you, but we chose not to. Remember that. Remember that when humans had the power to destroy you, we showed mercy instead. She paused, letting the words sink in. You attacked our people 18 years ago. You killed 2 million innocent civilians on New Helsinki. We have not forgotten, but we are not like you. We do not believe in revenge for its own sake. So I am giving you a choice that you never gave us. Your life support systems are still functional. Rescue ships can reach you within days. When they arrive, you will be taken into custody, and your leaders will stand trial for your crimes. Or you can activate your self-destruct systems and die here. The choice is yours. There was a long silence. Then, one by one, the Harrow ships began powering down their weapons completely. They were surrendering. It was the first time in recorded history that Harrow had ever surrendered to anyone. Commander Yerick's face appeared on screen again. The Fennery officer was openly weeping. Admiral Chen, I have no words. You saved us. You saved all of us. And you did it without Without becoming monsters ourselves, Sarah finished. Yes, Commander. That was the whole point. The Prometheus began the slow work of securing the disabled ships and coordinating rescue efforts. Sarah stepped away from the bridge and walked to the observation deck at the rear of the ship. Through the windows, she could see the drifting hulks of the Harrow fleet. 18 years ago, she had watched helplessly as ships like those killed everyone she loved. Today, she had defeated them. She had proven that humanity could protect itself. But more importantly, she had proven that humanity could win without losing its soul. Her communicator beeped. It was Torres. Admiral, we're receiving transmissions from Unity Prime. The Security Council session has been postponed. And, Admiral, you need to see this. The smaller species are making statements. The Fenari, the Duloc, a dozen others. They're calling you a hero. They're demanding that the ban on the Prometheus be rejected. Sarah closed her eyes. The battle was over, but the war for humanity's place in the galaxy was just beginning. Tell them we're coming home, she said, and tell them we're ready to talk. Behind her, the stars shone cold and bright. Among them, somewhere, more Harrow were waiting. But for the first time in 18 years, Sarah was not afraid. The galaxy had tried to ignore humanity's pain. They had tried to ban humanity's strength, but they could not ignore what had happened here today. Everything was about to change. The return journey to Unity Prime took longer than the trip out. Sarah ordered the Prometheus to travel at normal speed, giving her time to think and giving the galaxy time to absorb what had happened. The transmissions coming from Concord space told her everything she needed to know. The smaller species were celebrating. The larger powers were in chaos. And everyone, everywhere, was talking about the human ship that had defeated 300 Harrow vessels without taking a single life. When the Prometheus finally docked at Unity Prime, Sarah was surprised to find a crowd waiting for her. Hundreds of aliens from dozens of species filled the docking bay, pressing against the security barriers. As she walked down the boarding ramp, they began to cheer. She saw Fennery jumping up and down with excitement, their fur bristling with joy. She saw Duloc pulsing with bright colors of celebration. She saw species she did not even recognize reaching out toward her, trying to touch her uniform as she passed. Admiral Chen! Admiral Chen! A young Fennery managed to break through the barrier and ran toward her. Security officers moved to stop him, but Sarah waved them off. The young alien skidded to a halt in front of her, breathing hard. My family lives on Sorrel 3, he gasped. You saved them. You saved all of them. I don't know how to thank you. Sarah put a hand on his furry shoulder. You don't have to thank me. Just remember this moment. Remember that you don't have to be alone. She continued through the crowd to where Commander Torres was waiting with a security escort. Admiral, the Security Council session has been rescheduled for tomorrow morning. The Earth Ambassador wants to meet with you immediately. I'm sure he does. Any word on how the vote is likely to go? Torres shook his head. It's chaos up there. The Velthari and Kreth are still pushing for the ban, but they've lost a lot of support. The smaller species are threatening to leave the Concord if humanity is punished for saving the Fenari. Sarah nodded slowly. That was better than she had hoped. But she knew the elder races would not give up easily. They had too much to lose. The meeting with Ambassador William Park lasted 3 hours. He was a career diplomat, skilled at reading political situations, and he was deeply worried. The Velthari are furious, he told Sarah. You embarrassed them. You proved that a single human ship is worth more than their entire philosophy of balanced deterrence. They'll never forgive that. I wasn't trying to embarrass anyone. I was trying to save lives. I know that. You know that. But they see it as an attack on their power, and the Kreth are even worse. Their entire military strategy is based on overwhelming numbers. You showed that numbers don't matter against the right technology. Sarah leaned back in her chair. So what do you recommend? Honestly, I don't know. If you had destroyed the Harrow fleet completely, it would actually be easier. They could call you a war criminal and turn public opinion against you, but you didn't destroy them. You showed mercy. You made it very hard for them to paint you as a villain. That was the idea. Ambassador Park looked at her with something like admiration. You planned this from the beginning, didn't you? Not just the battle, but everything that came after. I planned for the possibility. 15 years is a long time. I had to think about how the galaxy would react to what we built. I knew they would be afraid. I knew they would try to take it away from us. So I needed to show them that they were afraid of the wrong thing. What do you mean? They were afraid we would use the Prometheus for conquest, that we would become the next great threat. I needed to prove that we are exactly the opposite. We are the shield, not the sword. The protector, not the predator. The ambassador was silent for a long moment. Then he smiled. Well, Admiral, you've given me something to work with. Let me talk to some of the uncommitted delegates. I think we can win this vote. Sarah spent the evening alone in her quarters, reading reports from the Sorrel Drift. The Harrow prisoners were being held on a converted cargo station, awaiting trial. Most of them were confused and frightened, unable to understand why they had been spared. A few had attempted escape and been easily recaptured. None had chosen death. There was something else in the reports, too. Preliminary interrogations had revealed fragments of information about Harrow society. They were not simply raiders. They were refugees, survivors of some ancient catastrophe that had destroyed their home world. For thousands of years, they had wandered between galaxies, taking what they needed to survive. It did not excuse what they had done. Nothing could excuse the death of 2 million innocent people on New Helsinki, but it made them more understandable, more human in a strange way. Sarah filed the information away for later. Right now, she had to focus on surviving tomorrow's vote. The Grand Assembly Hall was packed to capacity when she arrived the next morning. Every seat was filled. Delegates crowded the aisles and balconies, eager to witness what everyone knew would be a historic moment. The Velthari High Minister opened the session with cold formality. We are here to vote on the motion to ban the Prometheus-class warship design. Before we proceed, the delegations may make final statements. The Velthari Dominion will speak first. Kethros rose from his seat. He looked older than he had just days ago, as if the stress of recent events had aged him years and moments. The Galactic Concord has maintained peace for 3 millennia through balance. No single power dominates. No single species threatens the others. This balance has prevented countless wars, saved countless lives. He pointed at Sarah sitting in the human section. That human ship threatens everything we have built. Today it was used against the Harrow. Tomorrow it could be used against any of us. If we allow this technology to exist, we open the door to a new era of fear and instability. There were murmurs of agreement from some quarters, but fewer than Sarah had expected. The mood in the hall had shifted. The Kreth delegate spoke next, clicking his mandibles with agitation. Our species has protected conquered space for 10,000 years. Our fleets have kept the peace. Now the humans arrive with their miracle ship and expect us to simply accept that everything has changed. This is not acceptable. This is not how civilized species behave. More murmurs, but also some hissing and clicks of disagreement. The smaller species were restless. Then the Fennery ambassador rose to speak. Yilma was an elderly female, her fur gone gray with age. She walked slowly to the podium, and the hall fell silent. Everyone knew what she represented. Everyone knew whose lives had been saved. 3 days ago, she began, her voice soft but clear, my people prepared to die. The Harrow fleet was coming, and we had no hope of stopping them. We sent messages to every species in range, begging for help. Do you know what we received in return? She paused, looking around the hall. The Velthari told us that their fleet could not arrive for 3 weeks. The Kreth told us that they would send ships as soon as possible. A dozen other species told us they were very sorry, but there was nothing they could do. Her voice grew stronger. We prepared to evacuate what we could. We prepared to watch our outer colonies burn. We prepared to lose millions of our people, just as the humans lost millions of theirs 18 years ago. She turned to look directly at Sarah. And then one ship came. One ship against 300. One ship crewed by a species that we barely knew. A species that had no obligation to help us. They came because it was the right thing to do. The old Fennery straightened her small body with dignity. The Velthari speak of balance. The Kreth speak of tradition. But where was your balance when my people faced extinction? Where were your traditions when we needed help? She pointed at the hologram of the Prometheus that still floated above the stage. That ship did more for my people in one day than the Concorde has done in a century, and the humans did not destroy the Harrow. They could have. They had every reason to. But they chose mercy. They chose to be better than their enemies. Her voice rang out across the silent hall. If this Concorde bans that ship, if we punish the humans for saving us, then we are not worthy of being called a civilization. We are just a collection of powerful species protecting our own interests. She returned to her seat. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the Dulak ambassador rose. Then the ambassador from the Kalari Republic. Then a dozen others, all speaking in support of humanity, all pointing to the Prometheus as an example of what the Concorde should be. By the time the speaking ended, Sarah knew the vote was won. She could see it in the faces of the delegates, in the shifting body language of the undecided. The tide had turned. High Minister Kethros called for the vote. One by one, species registered their positions. The ban failed by 23 votes. The hall erupted in cheers from the smaller species. The Velthari delegation sat in the stunned silence. The Kreth clicked furiously among themselves. But it was done. Humanity had won. Sarah walked to the podium as the noise slowly died down. She had not planned to speak, but something moved her forward. The delegates watched as she took her place at the center of the hall. I want to thank those who voted against the ban, she said, not for humanity's sake, but for your own, because this was never really about one ship. It was about what kind of galaxy we want to live in. She looked at the Velthari High Minister, who met her gaze with cold eyes. We built the Prometheus because we were afraid. We built it because the galaxy taught us that we had to protect ourselves. But we do not want to be alone. We do not want to stand apart from the community of civilized species. She took a deep breath. So I have a proposal. Instead of banning the Prometheus, use it. Create a rapid response force to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Let the Prometheus be the flagship of a fleet dedicated not to any single species, but to all species. A true shield for the helpless. The hall was utterly silent. Then the Fenri ambassador began to clap. Others joined her. Soon the hall was thundering with applause. Sarah stepped back from the podium. She had won the battle. Now the real work would begin. In the back of the hall, unseen by most, a communication officer rushed in with an urgent message. He found Commander Torres and whispered in her ear. Torres went pale. She made her way to Sarah's side and spoke quietly. Admiral, we've received a communication from the edge of conquered space. It's the Harrow. Sarah's heart stopped. Another attack? No, Admiral. They want to talk. No one in recorded history had ever received a communication request from the Harrow. For 3,000 years, they had been silent killers, appearing from the void, destroying everything in their path, and vanishing without a word. Entire species had tried to negotiate with them. All had failed. Now they wanted to talk, and they wanted to talk to the humans. Sarah read the message again in her ready room. It was simple, almost primitive in its construction. We speak. You come. Alone. Coordinates attached. The coordinates pointed to a dead star system at the very edge of mapped space, far from any inhabited world. It's a trap, said Commander Torres. It has to be. Probably, Sarah agreed, but we have to go. Admiral, with respect, that's insane. You'll be flying into unknown territory to meet an enemy that has never shown any interest in peace. They could have 100 ships waiting. Sarah looked at her second in command. Torres, when I disabled their fleet, I told them that humans are different. I told them we believe in mercy, in second chances. If I refuse to even hear what they have to say, what does that make me? Torres had no answer. Besides, Sarah continued, the Prometheus can handle anything they throw at us. If it is a trap, we'll survive it. And if it's genuine, Torres, do you understand what that would mean? If we can actually communicate with the Harrow, we might be able to end their raids forever. The decision was made. The Prometheus departed Unity Prime the next day, leaving behind a galaxy buzzing with rumor and speculation. Some said Admiral Chen had gone mad. Others said she was the bravest human who ever lived. The truth, as always, was somewhere in between. The journey took 6 days. As they traveled, Sarah studied everything known about the Harrow. She read accounts of their attacks going back centuries. She examined the debris recovered from rare battles where Harrow ships had been destroyed. She reviewed the preliminary interrogation reports from the prisoners at Soral Drift. A picture began to form in her mind. The Harrow were not simply monsters, they were survivors. Something terrible had happened to their species long ago, something that had driven them from their home and set them on a path of eternal wandering. They raided because they had to, because they had forgotten how to do anything else. It did not make them innocent, but it made them understandable. The dead star system was as empty as promised. A burned-out sun hung at its center, surrounded by the frozen corpses of planets that had died when their star did. No life could exist here. No civilization had ever called this place home. Single ship detected, reported the sensor officer. Harrow configuration. It's alone, Admiral. Hold position. Open a channel. The view screen flickered, and for the first time in human history, a Harrow face appeared. They were not what Sarah had expected. The Harrow were tall and thin, with elongated skulls and large dark eyes that seemed designed for seeing in very dim light. Their skin was pale, almost translucent, and their hands had 6 fingers each. They looked fragile, delicate, nothing like the brutal killers their reputation suggested. The Harrow on screen studied Sarah with those deep black eyes. When it spoke, its voice was surprisingly soft. You are the one who stopped us. You are the one who chose not to kill. Yes, said Sarah. I am Admiral Chen. Chen. The Harrow seemed to taste the word. I am Calthex. I speak for those who remain. Those who remain? Our fleet is scattered. Many refuse to accept what happened at the Fenari system. They have gone to continue the old ways in distant places. But some of us were changed by what you did. Sarah leaned forward. Changed how? Calthex was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried something that might have been pain. We have been killing for 2,000 years. We have destroyed worlds without number. We have taken everything we needed and given nothing in return. And in all that time, no one has ever defeated us. No one has ever had the power to destroy us and chosen not to. His dark eyes fixed on Sarah's face. You could have ended us. Your ship, your weapons. We could not have stopped you. Every Harrow in that fleet knew they were going to die. And then you let us live. You told us to remember mercy. I remember, said Sarah softly. We have been thinking about that ever since. About why you would do such a thing. About what it means. Calthex paused. Chen, do you know why the Harrow began raiding? I've read the intelligence reports. Your homeworld was destroyed. Destroyed? Yes, that is one word for it. Calthex made a sound that might have been a bitter laugh. 3,000 years ago, the Harrow had a home. We had cities and art and children playing in gardens. We were not so different from your species. Then our sun began to die. Sarah listened in silence as Calthex told the story. The Harrow sun had been old, unstable. When it finally collapsed, the explosion destroyed 4 of their colonies and irradiated their homeworld beyond recovery. The survivors fled in whatever ships they could find, carrying nothing but memories of what they had lost. We asked for help, Calthex continued. We sent messages to every species we could reach. Some ignored us. Some promised aid that never came. And some tried to take advantage of our weakness. They attacked our refugee ships, stole our supplies, enslaved our people. His voice hardened. We learned that the galaxy was cruel. We learned that no one would help us. So we decided to take what we needed. If the universe would give us nothing, we would take everything. Sarah felt something shift inside her. The story was different in the details, but the core was the same. A traumatized people. Abandoned by those who should have helped them. Forced to become hard and dangerous to survive. It was humanity's story. It was her story. We know what that feels like, she said quietly. When the Harrow attacked our colony 18 years ago, the Concord did nothing. They told us we were not members, not protected. We lost 2 million people while the galaxy watched and offered nothing but words. Calthex studied her. And yet you did not become like us. We came close. There were voices on Earth that wanted revenge, that wanted to build a fleet and burn everything we could reach. I understood those voices. Part of me agreed with them. But you did not listen to them. No, Because I realized that if we became monsters to fight monsters, then we would lose something more important than any battle. We would lose who we were. The Harrow leader was silent for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. Can we, can we learn to be something else? After all we have done? After all the lives we have taken? Sarah thought about the question carefully. It was the most important question anyone had ever asked her. I don't know, she said honestly, but I know that change is possible. I know that the worst things about us don't have to be permanent, and I know that it's never too late to choose differently. The conquered will never accept us. We have killed too many of their people. They will want revenge. Maybe, but they don't have to know. Not yet. Sarah made a decision. What do your people need? Right now, what would it take for you to stop raiding? Calthex seemed surprised by the question. A world, somewhere to stop running, somewhere to remember what it was like to build instead of destroy. I might be able to help with that. For the next several hours they talked. Sarah learned more about the Harrow in that conversation than the conquered had learned in 3,000 years of conflict. They were not a single unified people, but a collection of clans, each traveling on their own fleet, each following their own leaders. Some had embraced the raiding lifestyle completely. Others, like Calthex and his followers, had grown tired of endless violence. Sarah made a proposal. The galaxy was vast. There were uninhabited systems, forgotten worlds, places where the Harrow could settle without threatening anyone. Humanity would help them find such a place. Humanity would provide the supplies they needed to start over. In exchange, the Harrow who accepted this offer would swear to never raid again. The others will not accept this, Calthex warned. Many of my people believe that violence is the only way. They will continue the old ways no matter what we do. Then we'll deal with them when we have to. But every Harrow who chooses peace is one less enemy we have to fight. Every life saved is worth the effort. Calthex studied her for a long moment. Then he did something Sarah had never seen a Harrow do. He bowed his head. Chen, I do not understand your species. You had every reason to hate us. You had the power to destroy us. Instead, you offer us hope. Why? Sarah smiled sadly. Because someone should have offered us hope when we needed it. We can't change what happened to our colony, but we can change what happens next. They agreed to meet again in 1 month. Calthex would gather those Harrow who were willing to accept the offer. Sarah would find a suitable world and prepare the supplies. It was the beginning of something that might take generations to complete, but it was a beginning. As the Prometheus turned to leave the dead system, Torres approached Sarah with a question. Admiral, how are you going to explain this to the Concord? If they find out we're helping the Harrow, we'll deal with that when we have to. Right now, the galaxy doesn't need to know. What they need to know is that the Harrow raids are slowing down. Eventually, they'll need to know everything. But by then, hopefully, the peace will be too established to undo. Torres nodded slowly. And what about the Harrow who refused the offer? The ones who keep raiding? Sarah's expression hardened. Then we'll stop them. The same way we stopped them at Soral Drift. We'll show them mercy if they surrender, and we'll defeat them if they don't. We'll be the shield, not the sword. But shields still need to be strong. The journey back to conquered space was quiet. The crew sensed that something important had happened, even if they did not know the details. Sarah spent most of the trip in her quarters, writing reports that she hoped she would never have to share. She was interrupted by a message from Unity Prime. The vote on her proposal for a rapid response force had been scheduled, and something else had happened. The Velthari High Minister had resigned. Kethros, who had led the effort to ban the Prometheus, had stepped down from his position. In his final statement, he had said something that surprised everyone. I have spent my life defending the old order. I believed that balance meant keeping things as they were. I was wrong. Balance means ensuring that no one is helpless, that no one stands alone against the darkness. The humans understand this. Perhaps it is time we learn from them. Sarah read the statement 3 times. Then she smiled. Change was coming to the galaxy. It would be slow and difficult and painful, but it was coming, and humanity would lead the way. 1 year had passed since the Battle of Soral Drift. 1 year since a single human ship had defeated 300 Harrow vessels. 1 year since the galaxy began to change. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the Prometheus, watching the fleet assemble around her. 23 ships now bore the silver and blue markings of the Galactic Shield Force. They came from 12 different species, crewed by thousands of beings who had decided that protecting the helpless was more important than old rivalries. The Prometheus was still the flagship, still the most powerful vessel in known space, but it was no longer alone. "Admiral," said Commander Torres, approaching from behind, "the delegates are assembled. They're ready for the ceremony." Sarah nodded. Today was the anniversary of the battle. Today was the day they would formally inaugurate the Shield Force and announce its first permanent base. And today was the day she would share a secret that had been kept for 12 months. She turned to face her second-in-command. "Torres, do you remember what I told you when we first received the Harrow transmission? That if we could communicate with them, we might end their raids forever?" "I remember, Admiral." "It's time to find out if I was right." The Grand Assembly Hall was different than it had been a year ago. The seating had been rearranged, with the smaller species now occupying more central positions. The old hierarchy was fading. Something new was taking its place. Sarah walked to the podium and looked out at the assembled delegates. She saw friends and former enemies, skeptics and believers, beings who had learned to work together despite centuries of mistrust. "1 year ago," she began, "I stood in this hall and proposed that we create something new. A force dedicated not to any single species, but to all species. A shield for those who could not shield themselves. Today, that force is a reality." Applause rippled through the hall. Sarah waited for it to die down. "But I did not come here today just to celebrate our success. I came to share information that has been classified for the past 12 months. Information that I believe you all deserve to know." The hall went quiet. Delegates leaned forward, curious and concerned. "After the Battle of Sorrel Drift, I was contacted by the Harrow. They wanted to talk." The silence shattered into chaos. Delegates shouted questions, demanded explanations, accused her of lying. Sarah stood calmly and waited for order to be restored. "I know this is difficult to believe. For 3,000 years, the Harrow have been nothing but killers. They have never negotiated, never communicated, never shown any interest in peace. But our victory at Sorrel Drift changed something. It showed them that they were not invincible, and it showed them something else. It showed them mercy." She activated a holographic display. A star map appeared, showing the regions where Harrow raids had been reported over the past decade. Then a second layer appeared, showing raids over the past year. The difference was dramatic. The number of incidents had dropped by nearly 60%. "The Harrow are not a single unified people," Sarah explained. "They are divided into many clans, each with their own leaders. Some have rejected any offer of peace and continue to raid. But others have accepted an offer that I made 1 year ago." She changed the display to show a distant star system, unremarkable except for a single habitable world. "This is Haven. 1 year ago it was an empty rock. Today it is home to 300,000 Harrow who have chosen to stop running, stop fighting, and start building. They have sworn never to raid again. In exchange, humanity has provided them with the supplies and technology they need to establish a permanent settlement." The hall erupted again, but this time the tone was different. Wonder mixed with disbelief. Fear mixed with hope. The Fenry ambassador stood. "Admiral Chen, are you telling us that you have made peace with the Harrow? The same Harrow who destroyed your colony? Who killed 2 million of your people?" "Yes," said Sarah simply. "That is exactly what I am telling you." "But how? Why? After everything they did to you?" Sarah looked at the elderly Fenry, remembering the day when she had watched helplessly as ships like the Harrow vessels destroyed everything she loved. "Because revenge would not bring back my parents. It would not bring back my brother. It would not restore the colony or heal the wounds. All revenge would do is create more pain, more anger, more violence. An endless cycle that would never stop." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "When I faced the Harrow fleet at Sorrel Drift, I had a choice. I could have destroyed them all. Part of me wanted to. Part of me still wants to, even now. But I knew that if I did, I would become exactly what they were. A creature of violence, acting out of pain and fear. The Harrow became what they are because the galaxy abandoned them. 3,000 years ago, their sun died and their world was destroyed. They asked for help and received none. They were attacked, enslaved, betrayed. And so they learned that the only way to survive was to take, to destroy, to kill before they could be killed. She looked around the hall at the assembled delegates. They became monsters because we made them monsters. And I decided that if anyone was going to break that cycle, it had to be us. It had to be humanity. The Kreth delegate rose. His clicking had a different tone than before, more thoughtful, less aggressive. Admiral Chen, you say that some Harrow have accepted peace. What about the others? The ones who continue to raid? They are still out there, Sarah admitted, and they will be dealt with. The Shield Force will protect those they threaten, and we will show them the same choice we showed the Harrow at Soral Drift. Surrender and live, or fight and be defeated. But we will not hunt them down. We will not become exterminators. Every Harrow who chooses peace will be welcomed. Every Harrow who chooses violence will be stopped, but not destroyed. And if they never stop, if they raid forever, then we will defend against them forever. But I believe that eventually, even the most violent among them will see that there is another way. It may take generations. It may take centuries. But change is possible. I have seen it with my own eyes. The new Velthari High Minister, a younger female named Selketh, stood to speak. Admiral Chen, the Velthari Dominion has watched humanity's actions over the past year with great attention. We were wrong to try to ban the Prometheus. We were wrong to see humans as a threat. What you have accomplished, it is beyond anything we imagined possible. She bowed her head in a gesture of respect. The Velthari would like to contribute 3 vessels to the Shield Force, and we would like to formally apologize for our opposition. You have shown us what true strength looks like. The applause that followed was thunderous. Sarah stood at the podium, watching as species that had been enemies for millennia rose to offer their support, their ships, their commitment to a new way of doing things. The Prometheus had been built from fear. It had been designed to protect humanity from a galaxy that had abandoned them. But it had become something more. It had become a symbol of hope, a proof that even the most powerful weapon could be used for peace. After the ceremony, Sarah returned to the Prometheus. The ship would be departing soon, leading the Shield Force on its first official patrol. There were still Harrow raiders to stop, still worlds to protect, still a galaxy to change. Torres met her at the boarding ramp. Admiral, you have a visitor. Sarah looked up to see a tall, pale figure waiting at the edge of the docking bay. Calthex had come to Unity Prime. She walked over to the Harrow leader. He looked different than he had a year ago. Less tired, less haunted. The weight of endless violence had begun to lift from his shoulders. Chen, he said, I watched your speech. You told them everything. They deserve to know. Some of them will never forgive us. The families of those we killed, the survivors of the worlds we destroyed, they will hate us forever. Some will, Sarah agreed. That's fair. You did terrible things, but hate can fade over time, if you give people a reason to let it go. Calthex looked at the assembled fleet, the ships of a dozen species working together under human leadership. You have changed the galaxy in 1 year. My people spent 3,000 years spreading destruction, and you have begun to undo it in 12 months. We didn't undo anything. The people who died are still dead. The worlds that were destroyed are still gone. All we've done is stop creating new destruction. That's not the same as making things right. No, Calthex agreed, but it is a start. They stood together in silence, watching the ships move through the darkness of space. Human and Harrow, former enemies, now something that might someday be called friends. Calthex, can I ask you something? Yes. What do you think would have happened if we had destroyed your fleet at Soral Drift? If we had killed every Harrow there? The alien was quiet for a long moment. We would have sworn revenge. Every Harrow in the galaxy would have united against humanity. The war would have lasted centuries and killed billions. And in the end, one of our species would have been extinct. That's what I thought. Chen, why did you really spare us? You say it was mercy, but there must have been more. No one shows mercy to an enemy who killed their family. Sarah thought about the question. She had asked herself the same thing many times over the past year. Because when I looked at your ships floating helpless in space, I didn't see monsters. I saw people who had made terrible choices, but who were still people. I saw myself, if things had been different. I saw what humanity might have become if we had given in to our anger. She turned to face the Hero leader. You were broken. The galaxy broke you, and then we broke you again. I couldn't fix what had been done to you, but I could choose not to break you any further. I could choose to offer something different. Calthex bowed his head. I do not deserve your mercy. None of us do. Maybe not, but that's the thing about mercy. You don't have to deserve it. You just have to accept it and try to be worthy of it. The Shield Force fleet began to power up, engines glowing against the darkness. Sarah turned to rejoin her crew. Admiral, Calthex called after her. My people on Haven, they speak of you often. They tell their children about the human who could have destroyed them and chose to save them instead. They call you something in our language. I do not know how to translate it exactly, but it means something like, the one who ended the long darkness. Sarah paused. Tell them the darkness isn't ended yet. It's just beginning to fade. The real work is still ahead. She walked up the boarding ramp of the Prometheus, the ship that had changed everything. Behind her, the galaxy was waking up to a new era, an era of hope instead of fear, of shields instead of swords, of mercy instead of revenge. The humans had built the most powerful battleship in history. The galaxy had tried to ban it, and now that ship was leading a fleet dedicated to protecting the helpless and offering redemption to the lost. It was, Sarah thought, exactly what humanity had always been meant to do. The Prometheus powered up its engines and led the fleet into the stars. There was still so much work to be done, so many wrongs to right, so many people to save. But for the first time in a very long time, Sarah Chen felt something that had been missing since the day New Helsinki burned. She felt peace. The galaxy was changing, and humanity, for all its flaws and fears and failures, was showing them the way.